All right, this is the pilot episode. And what we do is we talk about the framework that we're using to know ourselves and how to be successful in sales roles. And so you're going to hear from Clint and Nannette and Al and myself talking about where we struggle, where our personal nature limits us, and how we have to work to get past that. Things that I want you to think about is that these are not fixed. You can build upon these, but they're important to be aware of because pressure will make you revert. So listen to that. I hope you get a ton out of it. If you get any value out of it, please share it with someone else that you know in sales. Follow us on social media and enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In the D corner, we have Clint the Cleaver Bigelow. In the I corner, we have Al the Gambler Daniel. In the S corner, we have Nan the Promoter Fallman. In the C corner, we have John Small Mountain Hill. Let's get ready to throw down!
Welcome to the show, everybody. We are going to be talking a little bit about why we're here and why you should be listening to us. You know, we're all salespeople, and we worked really hard to kind of understand ourselves because that's where success ultimately leads to. In sales, you've got to be able to communicate with people, meet people halfway, set expectations appropriately. And a lot of that starts with understanding your comfort zone, how you approach situations and conversations.
Relationships.
Who you are as a person, who your customer is as a person.
Absolutely. So the way that we do that and the way that a lot of the sales teams around the world do it is using an assessment called DISC, right? 4 different quadrants, D, I, S, and C. And you just happen to have all 4 of those people here. We got Clint, who's our D. D stands for dominant.
The D.
The D. Al is our I.
Whoa. Guys, strap in. This is going to be a ride that you're going to run on, right? So I appreciate the calmness of your introduction here, but if you're not getting with this group, then you're losing. You're losing out, man.
How textbook of I.
You're one step behind the game, and you hadn't even figured it out, so listen up.
Yeah. I stands for influencer.
Did that influence you?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Or as Nannette says, what do you say?
You brought it up, sweetheart.
Ignorant?
You tell us.
It's something we can.
I did not say
Moving
that.
on, John.
The next on that is S, which stands for Steady Motivator, which is Miss Nannette. And then I'm the C, and C's are compliance. By boring, you mean awesome. We get shit done.
Very awesome. Very awesome.
And so let's talk a little bit about D's, right? Because they're the first one in the acronym.
And if we don't talk about them first, they're all whiny.
That's true. So D's are, that dominant title is pretty legit there. You guys are task driven, love to get shit done. You don't need all the details. It needs to happen or you need to move on.
Hey, get driven, I like to make a decision kind of off the handle.
Mm-hmm.
We get some of the facts because we are task driven, so we get some of the facts, but we like to just dive in and say, let's get this shit done today. What does it take to get this done now?
Yeah.
There's a lot of pros and cons to that. We'll dive into that deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Eyes
are the center of attention, right? They're storytellers. They're wildly
fun.
Exaggerating in all instances. Am I wrong?
I think you're a little off base there.
Tell us.
Okay.
I think we only want to take things as far as you will believe them, right?
Hey, Doc, why don't you tell us a story about it?
Not yet.
That's true. So
keep you on the.
They're the sociable people, right?
Sometimes they're bellmen.
That's true. They are sometimes bellmen. We'll talk way more about that eventually.
Successfully.
S's are team focused. They want what's best for the team. Everyone's got to feel good about it. It's got to be like a really good fit, and not just for them. It's more about like the culture and the impact of the end result for everybody involved, and less about them. So because of that, they don't run towards conflict straight ahead. Al's got something to say.
Well, I think if there's a definition of sort of passive aggressive, and I don't mind that. I think that S's, the last thing they want to show you is that aggressive side.
Sure.
But
That makes sense.
if they're worth their salt, right? If they've had some success in this world, they'll bow up on you and bite you in the ass in a New York minute.
Have you ever done that, Nan?
I have.
Interesting. We're going to talk about that because I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Rounding that out is the C, right? C is also task driven, but unlike the D, we're not gut focused. We are very factual focused. And so because of that, I always know my facts. And if I don't really have a lot to say. And in a sales role, that leads to being kind of slow to start. You know, I need to know enough.
Well, you also won't talk unless you know the facts. So it's not that you're not
True.
willing; you just don't know the facts. So therefore,
Processing.
But the minute
I got to call you to the carpet on the fact
Always
that.
does.
So I call my accountant, who's quite the C, right? I'm in Vegas. I'm at the tables, and I get rolled up on with, we need your social security number, right? Because I've gone in and out too many times, right? They had me down for like these big wins that I really didn't have. But I was prone to just go take my chips back to the cage. So long story short, I call my accountant. I'm like, what the fuck? I told the guy to fuck off, right? You can't have it. Give me your social security number, right? And he wouldn't. I'm like, see what I mean? It doesn't feel very good. So I go over and the guy says, no, they're just filing a form. This is my accountant. So immediately he goes to guns with, no, you're fine. You're safe. So a good C that knows his stuff knows how to calm guys like me down, right? Like, chill out. You got this. Because he's given me the facts of the equation. And to say that you don't know, you usually know, man.
Yeah, okay.
you have a better opinion than most because you've researched some shit.
Well,
Or what
This-
you'll say,
this-
not to interrupt, but
Yeah.
what you'll say is, here's what I know about that. And you know a lot of things about that, right?
sure.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah.
So
okay.
don't sell yourself short.
Jesus Christ, his headphones won't fit after this is all over.
Well, that brings up an important point that we're talking about comfort zones and natural comfort zones, right? Once you know where you struggle, then you can work on making that part of your comfort zone, right? And we've all done that, which is why being a C, it's not supernatural for me to be here talking with you guys or to do networking or to go do business development. Like that was so far outside of my comfort zone. I had to build accountability and systems and processes around all that stuff or else it would never get done. So whereas Al, right? Al can network with anybody. He just walks in a room and is like, hey, just strikes up conversations, right? I've seen you do it.
If you bring enough $100 bills, you can get through anything, right?
But like, I don't have that skill set. And so
Okay.
it wasn't until like I started networking and I had a goal for networking. I just want 2 cards. I just want 2 cards of things that I should follow up on. That made it easy. Then I'm just like, I'm running the task at that point. Whereas
So-
now my comfort zone is I'm okay with it, right? I can speak in front of groups. I'm here, obviously. I network all the time. So it's knowing that shortcoming and then understanding how you build it into your comfort zones. That way it's just something you do and it doesn't tax you and wear you out.
Yeah, you said something about, kind of seeing your short side or your weaknesses. But it's also just knowing about your strengths as well. And also the weaknesses and strengths of who you're talking to.
Yeah.
That's what DISC really pushes. And that's what we really learn out of all of this is to look at somebody across the table from you and say, okay, they have this communication style. I have this. We have to meet in the middle or adapt one way or the other to get along.
Can we back up just a hair? Because some of these folks out here listening to us
Or watching.
may be going DISC, right? And I think it is worth explaining. You did explain it, but in a sense of everybody fits into a category, right? That we're not all the same,
Sure.
but that we all have, there are similar patterns that have been developed or seen out there. So you guys out there listening, what we're talking about is the powers that be, and it wasn't us sitting at the table,
Correct.
came up with a system that a lot of people seem to find valid that places 4 quadrants, right? And so if you had a square and you took a cross and you put it in there and divided it into 4 quadrants, each one of us that you hear on the mic or see on the TV fits into one of those quadrants. And then the struggle is how we each communicate with each other.
Absolutely.
And how because you're only a quarter of the population and maybe even less because some people are packed a little more densely into one quadrant than another.
Mhm.
So if you're out there dealing with your family, dealing with your job, dealing with the people that you work with, what we're hoping to bring, or what we know we're going to bring to you guys, is some clarity on why I didn't understand that guy, right?
Yeah.
Or what the hell just happened in that conversation.
Well, to help you identify where you are you a D? Are you listening to this very short segment so far? Have you thought, oh, that kind of sounds like me? And then identifying that and how you're going to go forward, dealing with identifying your client. It's really important, because if you just haphazardly go into an office and you have no idea what your plan is, you have no goal of how you're going to react, it's really vital to understand if you're a D, an I, an S, or a C. And so that's what our whole objective here is, to identify that and show you how we have succeeded going forward with that. And it's worked. It's very advantageous.
And also failed.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, we all fail.
So
Everyone fails.
I don't want to.
It's not a silver bullet for sure.
No,
I don't want to knock you off your pike, because we have also failed because we've got it wrong. So I do that all the time. People ask me, "What do you think that guy is?" I say, "Oh, he's an I. He's an IS." Oh, now his profile shows a D, and I'm kind of blown away with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I learn a lot of why he is what he is, and I think as we go through this episode, we got to start talking about what a D is, an I, an S, and a C is, and what those buzzwords are of why we are that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to start getting into that here in a second.
Well,
Go
John,
ahead.
walk us through the general premise of who symbolizes a D. So maybe they could really, understand then who's an I, meaning, general.
Sure. Yeah. Before we do that, I'm going to reference something that Clint said. He
Okay.
said an IS, right? Most people have got a secondary letter, right? Like,
Sure.
and that has a huge impact. If you're looking at someone who is primarily an I with some D versus someone who's D with a little bit of I, there are differences between those two personalities and those two people and how they're going to perform and where those comfort zones are. So you've got a primary letter, and then you have a follow-up, right? And once again, I can't make this clear enough. This is not set in stone, right? But look at what happens when you're uncomfortable, under pressure, stressed out, or in like a new environment, because that is where all of this stuff starts to really showcase itself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and all information is good information. So the more you have of it, the better the judgment that you can make. So if you're going out there blind already, you're walking into a door and you don't know anything about the person you're about to talk to, if you know nothing about them, that conversation is a lot harder than if you start seeing little ticks of what makes them work, and you can categorize them and understand how to communicate with them from your personality to them. That is what DISC does for you.
Right. So to use an analogy, it's kind of the oil and vinegar thing. So if you're an I and you go to a C, the I's like all flamboyant and just la 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 la, like fun stuff, and the C's going, man, I just want to know numbers. I want to know details. So it's a little oil and vinegar. The same thing with a D and an S. I'm like, how are you? Is everything great? I hope everything's wonderful, because I really want that. He just is like, quit talking. Like he's irritated with the
talking about me.
Yeah,
Clint, the D.
Clint
So-
the D.
Dominant D.
But I will tell you, the initial conversation that got all of this going was the D and the S having the conversation. We just meshed. We went, oh, because we figured it out very quickly, because we had already learned a lot about this. So that's, again, the whole purpose of this is how to figure out how to identify who you are, how to mesh with your opposite, or not just your opposite, but definitely your opposite.
Yeah.
You've got to know that.
So let's dig in pretty quickly here of what DISC is. Let's start explaining what a D, I, S, and C truly is
All
for
right.
those folks that are out there listening. I don't care where you start, John. I know you'll lead this because you're a C.
Yeah.
Hopefully you start with a D because we're most important.
In your opinion.
In my opinion.
Well, so to touch on one thing that Nan really talked about is you have adjacent sections, right? So like D is in that top right-hand corner, and then I is under that, S is next to that, and then C is there. So as a C, it's really easy for me to move to and understand S's and D's. It's really hard for me to understand I's, right? And so we've all got that polar opposite, which is what Nan was talking about a moment ago.
Which brings up an interesting comment, because you and I
Did you
talked
say
about
interesting?
interesting.
Okay.
Sorry, did I stumble?
You did
a
say
little
it
bit?
weird.
I'm a little saliva in my mouth. Sorry. About
We
that.
don't need details.
Hey,
Thanks,
boogers
buddy.
in the nose, maybe.
That's not saliva.
Okay, moving on. Continue.
Off topic.
Continue.
A good topic,
Let's
but
get
off
back on
topic.
topic. Back on topic.
So, remember the phone call I had to you, right?
Mhm.
Early on, and
Talking about this.
yeah, talking about this, sitting
Because
down.
your and my version of how this started is obviously a little bit different than Nan's version of how
Exactly.
this started.
I was like, "What?"
I like Nan's
Nan
version.
grabbed the spotlight and put it right in
Yeah.
her face.
I
Right?
wasn't going to bring that up,
Well,
but,
but
I'm
you know
glad
what went through
did.
your
I have
mind,
no
right?
idea what y'all are talking about.
Look, I
I'm
love
so
Nan's
terrified.
version because it involves me.
Oh, that. Okay.
So, John, why don't you tell the true story about how all this started?
Yeah, so we were at a sales conference, and
Excuse me,
one of the sessions was, for lack of a better term, a little bit redundant. So we were out sitting by the pool, not working, just drinking. And Nan was working through a
Water with
problem.
limes.
I was working.
And Nan had a problem, and she asked for some help. And
Can we identify the problem? That sounds so bad.
Nan had a problem with a prospect.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, a sales
Yeah.
problem.
A
right.
prospect had gone dark on her, is what had happened. And we were kind of in problem solving mode, trying to help her out. And my advice was a little bit different from Clint's, but he saw value in mine, and vice versa. And we started to go back to the original point of the problem, right? Because it's easy to blame it on the prospect, but how much ownership are you taking over
True.
how you got to that point?
What's the point?
Yeah, and even in that fact, I think that John, if I remember correctly, John was like, okay, that's an interesting way to look at things. And I said, I can't believe you just said that. I cannot believe you said that to a fucking customer. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me. But that's explains a lot about our personalities, but also is two very different outlooks on what an S said to another person.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how this whole premise got started.
Yeah.
Of like, wow, there's some value in hearing the other personalities talk about how you should talk to our personality.
Yeah, because I'll say stuff to prospects that I will then try to say to Clint in almost like a joking manner.
Yeah.
And his eyes roll so hard. So
Or I do the audible, like the
Or
thumb and the pinky hang up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is over.
Oh, every
universal symbol?
conversation.
and that's really kind of how this started, because I can't talk to Clint the same way that I would talk to Al if they were both my prospects, right? That I gotta give him room to tell his stories and to have a ton of rapport and a ton of trust. And the D is just like, how do we make the best use of your time today?
So yesterday it was so hilarious. Clint was like, "If someone tells me something's the best, I hate them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I will never." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "If someone tells me that's the best coffee I've ever had, he's like, screw him. I will never drink that coffee." And I'm like, "What?" When someone tells me that's the best coffee, I'm like, "Man, I'm like buying it. I can't wait to try it."
That's
It's so
true.
bizarre. I'm like,
I thought that was
"Where?"
hilarious too, honestly.
But it's
that was
true.
crazy.
And that's the example that we hope to show, right?
Yeah.
That with
Better
some
know
specificity
not
that
to say best
you're
to a
talking
D.
to the four corners of the quadrants that you're going to be dealing
Yeah.
with out there.
That's really interesting that you bring up that story, because let's put that into your what you actually sell. So if you sell construction and you go into
Which is what Clint sells, by the way.
Yeah.
yeah. So if you go into a room and you're selling construction to a high S like yourself, Nannette, and you say this is
What are you saying? Did you just say 2 S's in construction?
maybe
Okay. All right. Good luck with that. But
This
go
is-
ahead.
this probably isn't gonna happen.
hypothetical. Hypothetical. We're just
But-
putting this on
Never
paper.
happening.
But if I talk to you about how features and benefits and we're great and we love safety and we love all of these things, and I use those big buzzwords like love and passion, and I do these things, you're
You are hired, baby.
yeah, exactly.
But he just got his ass kicked out on
Right.
the yard,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Foreman just tried to run him over with like a forklift. He's like,
but-
"Get out of the fucking way!" I'm after that bitch.
All right. All right.
But
Continue.
if I'm sitting across from myself and I mention those words, those features and benefits and all those things that sound great on paper but don't actually happen, I hang the phone up in this conversation. I'm done with you. You didn't tell me anything of value. You said what everybody said 7 times before you in this same interview, right? You're trying to get this job. So is everybody else. They've all said the same thing. what this does and what this podcast will really help you with is differentiating yourself, not in a way that's fake, but understanding who you are as a person, understanding who you're talking to, and getting that clear communication, equal business stature, all of those things out there. But you can't do that if you don't understand who you are as a person and who your customer is as a person on the personality spectrum.
I agree completely.
Yeah,
I
because
would have to agree as well.
information is power, right? That's a cliche, and I say it with some zest because if
He's an
before I knew all this, before I knew all this, right? I'd just go in and vomit. Right?
Yeah.
I just do
So
my
does
little
everybody.
happy dance. I'd get a, hey, that's great. And I would think that I was
Doc,
there.
everybody does. Every
Right.
personality here does.
Right.
Has, failed, succeeded sometimes because it does work.
Well, yeah, one needle in the
One
haystack.
needle in the
Yeah,
haystack.
then you think, oh my God, I'm on to riches. I'm buying the jet.
Not to cut you off, but I will say that everybody listening out there, if you're identifying with one of us four, we all have done that.
Oh,
It's
oh,
not.
yeah.
It's not a personality trait thing. We've all puked features and benefits.
And can I ask, Clint, can you put your fingers in your ear while I make this statement? There is not any, the D, the I, the S, no one's better than anybody else. I know the D.
Bullshit.
So let's talk. Okay, so I didn't mean to cut you off, Nannette, but this
You
brings up
didn't,
like a
sweetie.
huge point. Is that
Isn't it so sweet?
until you know this and you understand that there are other ways to sell and you can be your authentic self, you're just out there running around and you see guys like Grant Cardone and you're like, man, that guy is awesome. I want to be just like him. Well, if you're not like Grant Cardone, you have imposter syndrome. You think you're lesser, and that you can't be successful in a sales role. And that's just not true.
It is not true.
Al looks like he wants to argue with me.
No, I don't. I think I agree with exactly what you're saying, but if you think you want to be somebody else, good luck with that. Be yourself, but learn a process
Sure. Yeah.
to deliver who you are with the respect of who you're speaking to, because they're buying.
I agree. You can be an actor, 2 or 3 hours out of the day. You can't do that 24 hours of the day. Your natural self will always come out.
Always.
You'll get
always,
caught.
always.
You'll
Or
get
you get
caught.
burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
or your prospect's going to catch you.
Yeah.
They're going to catch you not being the way you were pretending to be.
It comes across on a level that
So-
they're not even aware of.
And
at
how many
times.
years? Slit my wrist. How do you go through life like that?
Never.
Well,
Nobody. Oh my
There's a
gosh, who
really
says that?
interesting a thing about traditional sales of where I have to do whatever the customer wants to do, right?
Absolutely.
I have to. Oh, he likes to go to the restaurant and have a Captain and Coke, so I have to enjoy that as well.
Mhm.
That's not true. You can absolutely say, "Hey, that's what you enjoy. I enjoy something else," and we can still get along. In a simple sense of what I'm talking about, you can do that as well as at the conference table, in a business meeting, in negotiations. You like this, I like that. I think that we both have valid points. We have to come to some understanding, but you can't do that if you always agree with somebody and you're sliding to their side completely. You have to hold your own nature.
Well, okay. And to take that point one step further, you don't have to go headbutt the guy. You just simply have to ask the right questions.
There's tact.
Yeah.
There's tact.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're trying to make a stand that I'm an individual when some
Yeah.
guy says, come be part of the crowd.
Well, look, a personality like me, I shut you down when you try to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's tact.
Probably
to
the
do
wrong
that.
thing
Well,
to do.
and-
But if I say, Clint, my God, that's amazing. How did you learn to drink whiskey
Well, by
straight
God,
out of the
let
bottle?
me tell ya.
Right.
And I think it's really important. I think this creates genuineness. You're not just going in there faking it. Like, you're going to be you. You're going to let them be them. But you're going to know how to make it work between the two of you. Not just going and BSing someone. That's who wants to sell like that? That's they don't want to receive it. I don't want to deliver
And-
it.
So I'm gonna talk about the thing that I see all the time in different online groups and things like that, and everyone is hung up on this idea of you got to provide value, right? And
100%. Oh my gosh.
like that's important,
I
but
think you need
people
to-
take it wrong, right? And for a lot of people, it's making assumptions and doing free work and giving away free knowledge and doing these things that can lead you down a path of losing a prospect or giving away too much information. Value sometimes is just showing up and listening.
It's giving people what
This-
they want.
Sometimes, if you're a successful business, you already have value.
Absolutely.
You hip pocket that.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is find a lot of reasons, them telling you, not me telling you that as a salesperson, you're trying to find out a lot of reasons why you should do business with me because I bring value to the table, right?
Mhm.
So the only way to understand that, we could go in very deep into this conversation. I won't right now. Ask a lot of questions, find out a lot of pain, dig deep. But the only way you can do that correctly, in my mind, is to understand who you are personality wise, understand what makes you tick, and understand on the opposite side what makes them tick.
Absolutely.
And I think what we're talking about today, as far as DISC,
Mhm.
DISC allows you, it's a platform, right? Platform's a kind of a buzzword in these days, of a place to go to and find out who you are, why you are the way you are, how to sell across spectrums to other people. It gives you tools to do that. That's what DISC does for me.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, it's way more because I'm fact driven, right? So I look at that and I look at those results and I'm like, oh, this is where I'm going to be weak, right? I'm not kicking down every door with like reckless abandon like Clint is going to as a D. You know, I'm not always going to thrive and seek out trying to be the center of a group of people like Al would, you know. So when I look at it, I think we look at it differently, and I think that this is pretty telling about our personalities. Is because I look at that and I'm like, cool, how can I build that? How can I make sure that I am getting out of my comfort zone and building this in as part of my process? And how important are those things? Because some of it I don't see as super important, because I think a D is totally fine doing a very high pressure close, which is not my style, because I don't buy that way.
It's stress to you.
Well, it's not stress. It's I've already made a decision, right? By the time that I pick up a phone and I call someone, I've done so much damn research.
That's interesting.
I'm already calling you because I see value in having a conversation with you. So if you're trying to force a close on me, that's never going to work. So just set better expectations. Hey, what happens after this call? Well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think about it and make sure that this is the thing I want to do. How long does that take? Right? At least then you're farming, or you're farming for like a next step, and you're not pressuring me to a next step, because that's not going to get you anywhere with someone like me.
Yeah,
and it's not going to get anyone with you either.
Well, it's very different, you know. So my mindset is I'm going to bust down the door, kind of like what you said, and say, look, I've done the research. I've consulted some people. This is the best situation for you. If you don't listen to me, you're a dumbass. That's kind of a different perspective, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very telling across the spectrum, because we are across the spectrum. We're both driving the task, but we have different reasons why we're doing that. I'm gut driven, saying, look, I'm telling you, trust me, I'm right. You're saying, here's all the facts and 100 line items in a spreadsheet of why I'm right. Very different.
And I'm thinking I'm losing a kidney somewhere in this whole process,
Yeah.
right? Trust me, just drink this and take the plane ride, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at a certain level, if you're not gauging the person across from you, knowing where they sit on the spectrum of, you know, how they buy, how they like to be spoken to, and you yourself, Clint, for those of you not watching, you know, have spoken to this. You have to be able to slide within your personality.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be able to be dynamic enough to go towards the position of the person that you're trying to sell to.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not willing to do that, you probably shouldn't be in sales, right?
Yeah.
Well, because you bring up a really good point, because we are hardwired to trust people who sound like us, communicate the same way as us, and not like actually look like us, but kind of seem like
Just
us.
And the more stressful that situation gets, we naturally slide back to where we're comfortable, which is our natural selves, right? So that happens a lot in sales. As salespeople, every situation is a little stressful, right? Trying to close a deal, trying to make the quota, trying to do these things. We get stressed out and we slide the opposite way of what we should, right? So if I'm a D, and we're
you are.
and I am
I was gonna
very
say,
very much
and you
so, right?
Thank you.
So that's not a what if question. I am a D. If
I am a D.
so, so if I'm in a situation with an I, and I feel that it's uncomfortable in a situation to adapt to an I, so I do the opposite and I slide to a corner D. I ruin that relationship. I ruin it. ruin everything that I could actually do less stressful by adapting a little bit of what he is or she is as an I to say, okay, let's move this process along. I still have to be task driven because I have to bring them to my level a little bit. But you, once again, I'm going to say it over and over in this episode. You cannot do that if you don't know who you are and who they are.
Yeah,
true.
For sure. Speaking about the gut-driven thing, there's a guy that Clint and I follow. His name's Jocko, and he always talks about this metaphor of
Jocko. So freaking serious.
Yeah. So Jocko makes this comment all the time, and to me,
to meet Jocko.
It's the
Never
purest.
heard of him.
It's the purest illustration of like what gut-driven is. He has talked about this idea that if he's on a plane, even if that plane is going to go down, he's confident he's not going to die.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas me being fact driven, I'm like thinking about the numbers. Like, man, no one survives plane crashes, really.
But see, Jocko is he's kind of, I'll say with me, because I think we're two peas in a pod. No, I'll say
I don't even know who Jocko is, but of course he does.
But look, there's not a lot of people that think that way. You're a small majority on that plane, or a small minority on that plane.
There's not a ton of D's.
Most people are gonna naturally go to their stressful environments, and they're gonna react in the way that feels natural to them. Not a lot of people can adapt another way of thinking in a short, stressful time. For instance, a plane crash, right? So if you're a worrywart, if you're a person that freaks out about everything and you let stress get to you, a plane crash is the worst environment for you.
Yeah.
For a guy like myself, I'm the opposite way.
Please tell. I have no idea what you could even be thinking in a plane crash.
There's nothing you can think other than,
so what are you
I
thinking?
hope to God I live and I have enough confidence in myself that I survived this, because God wouldn't do this to me. Or I have a reason for living. But the point of it is that I have a strong will, and I'm willing to understand that there's a 1% chance that I might live. And I
like
chase
it. That's cool.
But I
like
chase the 1%, not the 99% of failure.
All right.
And go ahead.
Well, I'm going to bring up one of my observations is you have more pretenders that are D's, right?
Sure.
And then when that hits, right, they're wetting themselves, right?
No doubt.
They're crying for Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior.
That
right?
explains a lot about their natural self, and we're talking about this too, Doc. So it's a great point. So a lot of people pretend to be this certain person in sales roles.
Because you're the superhero. You're the big guy, right?
Not even a D, but as a C. Like, I'm a fact guy. I love facts. That's what motivates me, until you get hit with the hard question of, okay, give me the facts. And then you go to that stressful situation. So as salespeople, we often, I think we've dived into this a little bit in our episodes before of DIS and C. We have a tendency. We have a what?
You know what?
I know.
Keep going.
We have a tendency to.
Clint's gonna get fined.
I know. We have a tendency to go back to our that 2-hour window of what our professional life is, but not the 22-hour window of who we truly are.
For sure.
So when that stressful situation comes along, we tend to dive back into that 22-hour window of who we are as a person, not as a professional.
But the hope here is that everybody learns who they are or accepts the fact that they need to stay in their zone to be the best person that they are.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I'm saying, whoa, don't hit me in the face, right? I know you're about to punch me. Don't do it in the face. And that's just honestly me. I'm like, I'm about to get my ass kicked. The reality comes into play. And some people are going to live in that state of denial, or they're going to be tougher than they want to be. It's okay to just cry when you need to cry, run when you need to run, but man up if you can, right?
So really important to be on that topic. In DISC, there are no weak personalities.
Absolutely.
There are no wrong.
That's a great statement right there.
There are no wrong personalities. There's no strong personalities.
No, I completely
They're
concur.
only strong if you realize who you are and can adapt to the person across the table from you to speak to. That's strength in DISC. But there's no weak.
Yeah. If you're... Sorry. Go,
well, what I was saying is an S and a C may seem weak to a D and an I.
Why?
But it's well. Let me finish.
Perception.
But it's perception, and perception is what 99% of reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is that we have to get past that. you're this person, so you're weak, or I'm strong. You have to get past that. You have to dump that. And the way you do that is to understand the way the other person thinks, because they are, look, when you're dealing with people in a professional world, they're obviously successful because they're sitting across the table from you, right?
Yeah.
That
Most cases.
in most cases, right? They may be starving, they may be a little bit hungry, they may be a lot of other things, but they're successful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a job, period. So if they're successful sitting across the table and they're an opposite personality from you, what power it is to understand what you are and what they are and make something work together.
True.
That opens a lot of doors.
But for sake of specificity, right? You can grab somebody, and maybe we should talk about, a Donald Trump's a D, right? As much as you may love him or hate him, right?
Yeah,
he
he's
has his issues, but that's exactly where he sits,
Yeah.
right? And then you have Mother Teresa, who's an S,
Yeah.
right? Let's take those two polar opposites. But to run an orphanage in Calcutta with
Yeah.
limited resources, that woman had to have balls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
She had to adapt different personalities.
And she had to decide
in
who got
different
fed and who
situations.
didn't.
She
and-
probably didn't have balls. She had passion.
Well, I'll use that as a
Tomato,
figure of
tomato.
speech.
Fair,
Exactly.
fair.
But the woman had some grit to be able to go in and get things done.
and that's not
in-
natural. What you're saying is that's not natural
Well,
to Mother Teresa.
I think it was, though.
passion,
She
right?
knew where her compassion lied. Now, did she think about some of the probably decisions she had to make? Did it hurt her heart?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, to feel that pain and be able to move past it, if you're a D and you bottle that up, you can't tell me your heart's
No,
never hurt
you're right.
before, right?
No, because I can tell you, for me to have compassion, we've said this before on this, is like, you mentioned the word love, and I'm like, oh, what is this love that you speak of? What is this? Please explain,
So
because I
sad.
don't. But it's not. It's just me, right? So having compassion is really hard for me to slide, versus an S that has tons of compassion and needs to tell you the hard truth is the exact same slide that I have to compassion.
Tough on
that
both
Shay has
ends.
to the depth.
Yeah.
So the point of all of that is that when you have to make those tough slides, which is exactly what we have to do in sales conversations, when somebody is opposite personality from you across the table, you have to do that, and you have to do that professionally. And the way you do that is to recognize who they are, and you see commonalities in the goal, in the end game.
And
that-
a process. And a process to get there.
But that's what we're talking about. As salespeople, you have to look at that person sitting across from you and who you are and say, okay, look, we both agree on this. Let's chase that avenue for a minute and see where we come out.
But so to boil this down to like a nice little point is that if you're a hiring manager and you're looking for someone, it's not about they've got to be in certain areas or spectrums or anything else. It's how coachable are they?
How teachable.
How hungry?
Absolutely.
Right? Because I've known a ton of people that are in that golden area that a lot of people are looking for, of the I with the D, and like they're not coachable. So they're not open to learning something else, So it's not about the certain personality type. It's about, you got to take other things into consideration, right? Because for instance, right, Al and Clint and Nan, they're all in very long selling cycles, right? I mean, Al and Nan will talk to a doctor for 7 or 8 months, sometimes a year and a half. I mean, longer than that sometimes, before they get a shot to do any business together.
Sure.
And because they're people driven, it's ideal for them. Now, Clint, you have a long selling cycle as well. And as a D, I would not, I would be a little bit concerned hiring a D for a very long selling cycle, because they're not the best at nurturing and managing
Right.
long-term relationships.
You're right. However, if you put that in a task orientation of, hey, 12 months from now, this reward is going to be great for you as a D,
Mhm.
and I accept the fact that it's a task, dude, I'll put in all the work that needs to be done, whether it's 12 months, 18 months, 3 days, it doesn't matter to me, because I have a task. But you have to realize that I have an end game. I have a reason that I'm doing all of this. It's not for, well, I'm going to do all this and maybe they might buy from me. That's a different story, because I'll drop that shit in a heartbeat.
So is something like networking?
I love networking.
Why?
If you do it right, you're the most powerful person in the room.
Well put.
D statement.
Sorry?
No, but I mean, that's a true statement.
No,
though.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And hearing him say that, I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's the only reason you would like it,
Yeah.
though.
Like if I'm going to go around and throw 10 business cards on the table and say, hi, how are you? My name's Clint. Oh, okay, you don't want to listen to me, and I walk away,
Mhm.
that's some weak ass shit. in my
I was
mind.
gonna say you've never.
But if you walk
done
in and you're
that.
like, dude, bro, the party's here. Shots, line them up. Let's go. Let's talk about this stuff. Let's get it all out on the table. What do you do? What do you do? Why do you do that? What do you do? Because that's one thing about a D is I'm going to ask you some tough fucking questions. And those questions are going to reveal a lot about you. But what we'll be left with after the smoke clears of all those tough questioning, right, wrong, and different. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. But when I get done asking 100 people a bunch of tough questions and I'm left with 3, that's my team.
Yeah,
That's
that makes
my
sense.
team that I want to go forward with. In a sales cycle, also you should do this, I think. When you're met with 100 prospects, vet them out. Vet them.
Oh yeah.
Ask hard questions. And when you're left with 3 prospects that answered your questions correctly, honestly, truthfully, deep down from their gut, and they give you all this information, those are the 3 that you chase, not the 97 people.
So what you're talking about right there is just qualifying people,
It is.
right? And like I think that's the lost art.
It is, and a D, if you're a D out there listening, you have all the tools already in your gut to do qualifying better than anybody, because it comes naturally.
I'm going to disagree with you on that point, but we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Okay.
Let's move on and talk about Eyes and Al specifically, right? Because most of the people that Al talks to are doctors, right? Al's in medical sales, and those guys are like me. I need a lot of information. I need a lot of details. I need all of that stuff.
They're a lot like everybody except for me, usually, unfortunately. Yeah, we have some S's. We have some compassionate
they have to
healthcare
compassion.
givers. Exactly.
Yeah.
They still stay there.
You can't be a doctor and not care about people.
Yes,
I
you can.
disagree. You
Oh,
absolutely
yes, you can. You can be
Interesting.
a technician that
Let's talk
doesn't
about
give
that
a
for
shit,
a second.
right?
Yeah, because that's
Wait a
interesting.
second, because in medical school they have classes on
That teach you
bonding and
not to
report
do that.
teach you to listen to your patient.
That's
not
cool.
Oh yeah.
I like
Oh yeah.
this.
There's a whole little push towards, well, we could increase patient satisfaction if you, the doctor, would listen more. But doctors really don't want to do that.
Sure.
They're like, I'm the smartest guy in the room.
Yep. I've got
I
this
know
all
what's
figured out.
best. I went to school longer than everybody else, and
So you're
there's a
saying-
hierarchy in that hierarchy. Right?
So are you saying most doctors are what personality?
They are D's and C's with some S's mixed in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a few of the
Because you're too busy
cardiologists.
partying if you're an I to make it through med school.
Yeah, you can't. Dude, we're talking about frat bros if it's eyes. We're not
Well,
talking about med school grads.
Now there's some eyes, but I think they shift. They're compassionate people with enough savvy to get through the book work, and they don't have to be D's, right? So it'd be an eye that could reach across and digest some information, sit down, take that test, and then go in and regurgitate it.
You're kind of describing yourself, to be honest with you.
No,
I am
for sure.
I
Absolutely.
because I got through that. But there's a point where that's the minority. I guess where I'm going with that. Most people are either analytical or they're driven. Like, this is my goal, that D, and this is what I want. And then some very compassionate S's. But here's what you see in the realm of being a physician. Certain categories of physicians, neurosurgeons versus proctologists versus dermatologists versus family medicine,
or a psychologist.
Yeah,
completely different.
Yeah,
Right.
So they all kind of fit a certain pattern, and when you start dealing with individual specialties, you'll see a lot of personalities that are very similar.
Sure.
And there's
it can become very convoluted, because I have a neurosurgeon that is a CS. He's a C in clinic and in surgery, but he's an S with his patients. And with his rep, me, I better just be very careful, because
that's 2 hours or 3 hours out of the day that we're truly our work self versus our natural self.
yeah,
That's
so you have
kind of
to.
what you're talking about. In a surgery type atmosphere, you got to be one person, which you're talking about is a C, where it's fact driven, analytical. I've done the research. This is what happens. But outside of that room, I'm a lover. I like people. I care what they think, and that'll come out of it. What you're talking about is where people slide. On this
so
spectrum.
Identification of their personality is huge, because you don't have a ton of time with them, and you better make sure you're doing the right thing.
And one of the big things about being an I, right, and you'll see this in all the reading, is a big need to be liked. And Al does one of the best jobs I've ever seen about distancing himself from that like. You know, I mean, I've seen him have incredibly hard conversations with partners and people, stuff like that. So he does a fantastic job.
He's on the spectrum.
If I can brag on you
I
a little bit.
I have a story about
Please do.
that.
About not letting that need to be liked interfere with
Business.
a business relationship, or elongating a sales cycle, or giving, you know, free advice or things like that.
But I can tell you that growing up and trying to be an adult, that need to be liked still haunts me. you
Oh,
know?
for sure.
I mean, because it's a tough challenge. But the more people I've been exposed to, and the more I'm able to slide up to being a D and making some decisions and running a business and having to make some tough choices, the way I justify that is, you did it to yourself. I just had a process I had to follow, right? You did this, so therefore I have to do that. And I have to remind myself of that.
Sure.
Because, you know, it gets tough.
Yeah.
I can tell you a quick story that Mr. Al Daniels here told me a while back that was true telling of who he is as a person. And open book here, I'm going to say it.
Were my clothes on?
Yeah, your clothes are on.
Okay, thank goodness. Go ahead.
So
You can talk about that one.
So Al gave me a little pointer one time. It's like, man, if you got 4 or 5 people that just want to go to a strip club, right? They want to party. They want to go to a strip club.
Are we
And
going here?
Yeah, we're going there.
Okay. All right.
But
I know where you're going. So
but
all
listen,
right, go ahead.
But
Run.
I've got to entertain those clients, as we all do. All personalities, all salespeople. It's not comfortable for 3 or 4 of us in different ways. It's comfortable. Sometimes it's not. We've got to entertain these clients. In this situation, he said something that blew my mind as an I, and where he slid to a D was like, I'm going to be a part of this party. I'm going to get you there. I'm going to have fun with this for a minute. And then I'm going to slide a couple $100 in this guy's shirt pocket and look at that gal and say, look, here's where the money is. I'm out. I've got better things to do. See you later. You guys have fun. That's not typically I
Sure.
would want to stay there and do all of that partying to be the center of attention. Maybe that's a bad example. I don't know, but it
I
always
think it's
resonated
good.
with me.
I think it's a really great
I
example.
do too. I
honestly.
think it's a very good example.
So the point of it is
and very
that's
truth about Doc.
yeah. So that's a point where a high I that wants to be the center of attention and be always involved in the party, take a step back, remain professionalism, slide a little bit towards a D in that case, and just say, look, I'm a part of the party. You guys are still going to have fun, but I'm checking out. Call me in the morning. Let's talk business. That's a pretty cool revelation that was something to me to say, wow, you can be this guy, but you can also have some tact, and you can have some rules and regulations in your own mind, but still be that guy. That was pretty revelationary for me.
Yeah, just pulling out the best in you and someone else.
I'm gonna argue one point real quick in this
Imagine
this
that.
idea that you have got to entertain clients, and you've got to do this kind of stuff, because that's
True.
not true across the board.
That
right?
is true.
It's
I
very
do-
relevant in y'all's world.
I
It's
probably
not
do
in
less
mine.
than anybody at this panel, to be honest with you.
You think you do less than me?
I do less than anybody.
I 100%
A
disagree.
couple $1,000s a year.
Less, like
Okay, so we're on
Zero.
the same page.
zero. Like
Yeah.
I'll have a cup of coffee. We'll have a conversation, but
Doc
that's it.
did that for lunch today.
Boring.
It is boring.
You want to
right?
have fun.
Because here's the deal.
Let's get on
right?
a plane to Vegas.
I'm a C, right? I don't. They're like I
But you
love.
don't
I
do that.
hold on. I love the people that I love, right? I love all you guys. We obviously have good relationships, but the average prospect, I want to fix your problem and I want to move on, right? Which is why I do kind of what I do, and it's a struggle for me, right? Because we're talking about a moment ago that these struggle in a very long selling cycle because you got to maintain relationships. I struggle with that as well because the average person I could give a shit less about.
Yeah.
Right. If I can fix your problem, let's have that conversation.
Yeah, there's no emotion.
Exactly. Right. Like, I have a daughter and she's amazing. And sometimes she gets
Yes,
emotional.
She is.
She gets
I
emotional
love
about stuff. And I am not nurturing in that moment. I have to force myself to go find like my nurturing side of myself because I'm like, I told you not to do that. Of course it broke.
Yeah.
Why are you crying?
But wait a
'Cause-
second, you're a great dad, man. I've seen
She's
you in
amazing.
action, man.
Thank you.
She's
You're
precious.
Thank you.
you're
Thank you.
you're
Thank you.
painting the
I
wrong
love him.
picture
I
for
disagree.
the
So wonderful.
public.
I'm
mentally,
joking.
right? But here's the deal: it's muscle. It's a muscle, right? And the more that
it's repetition,
right, and the more I do that,
repetition.
the easier it is. The easier it is.
And that goes with.
I have days where I'm not the cool dad. Like, let's be honest about it. And I fly off the handle, and
You're the only one
yeah.
ever.
But I try to not do those things, right? So I have to figure out how stressed am I, right? Because it's all relevant to my stress at the time.
That's a good point.
I just hope my kids are listening. I'm not the only asshole.
Your kids aren't listening to this.
Yeah, man, they're in college, man. They're out partying, but they're always like,
and your daughter's a D.
You didn't raise them well enough to listen to this.
Yeah, your daughter's a D. She's not listening to this at all.
No, she's like, my dad, what? He's village idiot on the show. I can't listen to that.
I want to drag you guys back in for a minute because we're trying to get through disc and we got a few minutes left here.
Yeah, we got to cover essence.
Yeah, I want to get through. We've covered what a D is: dominant personality, kind of brash, kind of gut driven, not so much people oriented. It does play a factor, especially in my world. I do care about people, but I care more about the task than people. And I definitely cares about also task-driven stuff, but more geared towards the people side.
It's way more about people than it is about tasks.
It is, but he still falls on that spectrum a little bit.
I think that is just
because it benefits.
Well, so once again, this goes back to the work that Al has done on himself, right? He's been in business for, hold on, because we know a lot of eyes, right?
No, I know a lot of eyes that are true corner eyes that
most of those eyes are not task driven whatsoever.
Well, what I want to picture is that let's talk in a clock mentality here. We started at 2 or 3 o'clock with a D, and we're moving down to 4 or 5 o'clock with an I, and now we're going to jump over on the other side of the spectrum with an S, which is Nannette here, and she is all people driven, right? You do care about a little bit of facts, but you chuckle, but you care about people and how they feel about what the job is going to end up doing, what lives is it going to save, what impact to the community does it have. That is a pretty clear cut a way to describe an S. Do you have anything to say on that?
I think Dr. Daniel does. Yeah. He's like biting at the bit to say something. What were you wanting to say? Nothing?
Well, yeah, I do want to say something. We all go to the grocery store, right? It's a process. There's only a couple of variants. When you get your card, you walk in. So a D goes to the grocery store, still follows the process. An I goes to the grocery store, a C. You decide what size basket you need. You walk through the process. So to think that just because you're an I, you can't go through a process of buying food and checking
Once again, right? It's about comfort zones, and it's about
identifying.
It's about identifying that because let me ask you this question: when you go to the store, do you have a list?
No.
Sometimes.
Always.
Never.
Every.
Okay. But
time.
I still eat. I still have food. It doesn't make it wrong.
But
it makes it different.
Correct.
And I forget some things, and I maybe make 2 trips, and I'm a little pissed off on the third trip.
No one's saying it's wrong. Yeah. We're just saying that it's relevant to your personality type.
But you can still go to the grocery store, still eat,
still be successful.
Right. Yeah. And
we're not making it out to be that eyes are on this island and
look, once again,
can't be successful.
There's no wrong personality here.
True.
So basically,
it's just different.
We're going to use the analogy of the grocery store. The D is going, where's the mustard? Immediately, I need it. Pay for it, out.
Yeah, and I don't give a shit about brand. I don't care about price.
Exactly.
I need mustard.
I love this analogy.
Got mustard.
Let's keep this going.
It is good.
And then the I goes to the grocery store and he sees everybody.
I only buy Heinz
because
Heinz is the shit.
What kind of mustard do you buy?
Yeah. Exactly.
What's the most popular mustard in the room? Because that's what I'm buying.
Exactly.
Let me tell you a story about mustard.
Yeah.
He wants the spicy mustard.
No, I have the best though. Yeah. So when you get the cart that wobbles or is too tough to handle, what do you do? What do you do when you?
I flip it upside down so nobody else uses it.
I knew you threw it on the ground, right? You tip it over, right?
Like, I'm done.
If there's a fourth wheel that's got a flat spot because they drug it across the parking lot, you flip it upside down so nobody else uses it.
And what do you do?
I get just pissed. I'm just furious. I'm mad. I'm just like, because I'll push it too far, right, into the store, right? I've spent too much time with the damn cart, and now I'm stuck. Do I take it back? Do I just leave it there? Which sort of that goes against my grain to just leave it in the aisle. and I march it back, but a lot of times I'll just go drag it so that it's known that
All right.
everybody, where's management? This thing sucks.
Center of
Right?
attention. Center of
All right.
attention.
Sure.
And I'm gonna fix it. And Clint, I'm
What-
sorry.
Hi, my name's John.
John.
What
What
do
are
you
you
do
gonna
with
do,
the
John?
cart?
Clint's always on
What do
your
you do
left
with
and
the
right
cart?
I'm
shoulder.
fixing it.
Fix it. You're gonna like get a wrench and
I'm
just
gonna
change the
go-
wheel?
Excuse me. I'm gonna ask
Excuse me,
people. I'm gonna
Mr.
figure out how
grocery
to
store
make
guy.
everything because I don't want someone else to have that janky little. What would you like to do with it, John?
I test
The
it
cart, that
before I
is.
walk
Oh
away
my
with it.
God.
Swear to God.
Oh
I'll
my
swerve
God.
it diagonally.
Of
I'm going to move it
course.
around a couple axes. I mean,
Point
like,
being-
Meanwhile,
and then I'm going to grab the wipe and clean the handle. because-
Meanwhile-
Always.
meanwhile,
Me too. Wipes,
half of
wipes,
Walmart's
wipes.
sitting in a line outside in the
Hey,
parking lot
that
waiting
ain't
on
my
John to get
problem.
his freaking cart.
that ain't my problem.
So that's just a little
Great
silly
analogy, though.
Yeah,
Because
that was pretty
that-
good.
that brings
came
out
out of
a lot.
nowhere. So S's, right? So to get back on task and to kind of continue this thread, right? One of the things that they're known for is avoiding conflict, right? I mean, it's tried and true. It talks about all the time. And it is really hard to get Nannette, to really step up and stand her ground, right? You know, there's a couple of topics where she'll do it, and you'll hear about them on here as we continue these things on. But she doesn't go out of her way to cause conflict. Whereas Clint, man, he just runs straight
like,
at it
"Can't
with his
wait."
hair on fire.
I don't like love, so hate is great for me.
So as an S in a salesperson role, right? How do you? I mean, I know the answer comes down to process and practice, but how hard is it for you to like stand your ground and push back and not discount and not let someone run you over with their process and make sure that your process runs?
Well, literally, it's just practice. You just go, oh, well, that didn't work well
Mhm.
when something doesn't work well. And so you learn. And what going into this, I would really like to help an S out there not have to go through the process that I've had to go through. So I think it literally is just going, oh, that really doesn't work well when you have to stand up for yourself. You can love people, but you still have to stand up for yourself.
That's very interesting because as a D, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't give a shit if you listen to this. and your first thought is, I want to help somebody. Very telling.
Yeah.
I'm telling my story and I don't give a shit. I'm just telling my story. Nannette is over here saying, I want to be here to help millions of people if I can. 12 people if I can. One person
The
would
only
be great.
reason I'm sitting with, no, I love all these guys, but truly, it's really important to help people. But ultimately, I think that's what we, even Clint, our little D, I think or big D.
Big D, big D,
Oh,
big
God.
D.
So sorry.
Nan's all about hearts and minds.
So
Hearts and minds.
then to wrap
Hearts
this
and
up as the C, right?
Thank you for bringing
Um,
this back to you, Mr.
We struggle with finding rapport, right? Having rapport, having emotional conversations, right? And we know that that's what triggers sales. And then the other thing is that I'm so fact driven that for a long time I didn't really understand the idea that prospects buy for whatever reasons they see value in. Like if I thought it was better, you're an
Yeah.
idiot, and I would judge you if you wouldn't make the if you're going to spend 99 cents with me and I can make you $1,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do that, bro,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Sometimes
I get mad.
with a high C, if you're selling to a Nannette that's a high S, they're buying from you because they like you, right? And you're
Uh-huh.
trying to sell to a person that likes you already,
And that makes me uncomfortable,
right?
honestly.
Sure. So you're trying to kill them.
did.
You're trying to kill them with facts, but they don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
They just say,
They just wanna
"Man,
help me out."
John, I like you, bro. I love you. Stop selling me. I got it. We're in." But you can't let that
They're
go
like,
because the facts
"No."
aren't
Yeah.
there.
Let me
right?
show you how smart I am by
100%.
giving you all these facts.
So great example of why you need to identify across the table from who you're selling to, because sometimes it's already sold.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's
And you
already
messed it
there.
up, yeah.
And now you're messing it up by
You're just
proving
stepping
all
all
these
in
things
it,
that
right.
don't need
Has
to be
anyone
talked
ever
about.
done
Yeah.
that before?
I have
Yeah.
oversold
Sure.
and
Yeah.
lost deals so many times. It's ridiculous.
There's no better way to lose a deal than oversell.
Absolutely.
And it happens to all personalities.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great spot to kind of wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first episode.
Yeah.
So if you got any value out of this, go share it with someone else, right?
And if you didn't,
Still
don't
share.
care.
Still share it.
Yeah, still share it. I
one of your
mean,
buddies
Be-
needs this help. Come
because-
on, man. Maybe you don't, but somebody you know does.
The thing is, Al made this statement whenever we were planning this, is that like you're gonna find yourself in one of us, right? So you might hate me, but love Al, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense, right?
It does.
Makes
So-
sense to me.
So
reverse that statement.
You know, find yourself in one of us, right? We've been down the road. We're still on the road all day, every day.
Yeah.
If you get any value in this, go share it with someone else. Go follow us on social media. Everything is at Sales Throwdown. If you're listening to us, you know, download all the other episodes. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. Sure. And we'll be back soon.
Yeah. I think a really important key to this whole wrapping up the disc is that everybody has a certain personality. You fall in a spectrum somewhere. No matter what you think you are, until you take a test and somebody tells you that you are on paper this person. You have to do that. That's step one. The other side of it is you can't assume that you're right and they're wrong. That's a big assumption to make in the professional world. You have to understand the reasons of why they think they're right, not because they are right and you're wrong. Why they think they're right and why you think you're wrong, or vice versa. And you come to a commonality somewhere down the road, and that's what makes partnerships, customers for life, things that we preach on. You can't do that without knowing who you are as a person.
Yeah, and if you're not sure where you are, if you've never taken this test, if this is your first time hearing about this, reach out to us on whatever channel, following, social media thing you are. Shoot us an email.
We'd love to help.
Yeah, we can get you this test.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a test that you can sit down and literally take that'll give you the insights you need to, the light bulb will go off, right? You'll now have a better understanding of, oh, okay, that's why I've done this. And you can then take that to understand your weaknesses, understand your strengths, and be better at feeding your family, feeding yourself, doing the things that you want to do. And the biggest portion of this, it allows you to be you, and you know, okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I've had colleagues and friends, both family, listen to some of our episodes and say, oh, I'm an I.
Again.
No, I didn't. No, I'm an I, right?
We'll talk later.
I am an IS. And I say, no, you're not, man. You're a D. You're a D all day long. And I end up proving that through a test, and they say, oh, actually, it's crazy. I came out as a CD. So what you think you know about yourself isn't always necessarily true. I think you should really invest a little bit of time to take a test to really show it.
I thought I was an I before I took this test, and my business partner who made me take the test thought I was a D. So you can be wildly inaccurate. So once again, we're wrapping up, right? For sure this time. Reach out to us, share it with someone else, right? Sales is hard enough as it is. You don't need to be out there by yourself.
So still got 30 seconds.
Nan, send us off.
Relationships.
Love,
Life
peace,
is about
rainbows.
relationships. Relationships are strong by knowing who you are and who you're with.
Absolutely. We'll see everybody next time.
Love y'all.
All right, be you.